Hi, today I'm going to be talking about poverty among veterans and how we can stop it. Many people don't realize that poverty is very common among the veteran community. Those who fight to serve our country are the ones that we expect not to be struggling as much when they come home because we assume there's so much in place for them to help them readjust to life, but there really isn't that many things to help them. After soldiers come home from war or being deployed, they struggle to readjust to living in a life that doesn't involve the battlefield or the things that they've become accustomed to. Which this can sometimes lead to like the poverty and the struggles that they tend to face when they come home. And I personally believe that no veteran should have to deal with living in poverty. They do so much for us, and they should be given, we should at least try to repay them back as much as we can. So today I'm going to be talking about the population of veterans living in poverty, the homelessness in veterans, and how and some programs that we could put in place to help the veterans that are suffering from poverty. So to begin, I'm going to talk about poverty in the veteran community. So it's more common than most people realize. Many people believe that it is easy for those returning home because there are programs that can help them readjust. This is not the case with many of our veterans. Some suffer from PTSD, and sometimes they have a hard time adjusting to being back home. I think many people will be surprised to find out how many veterans are living in poverty. According to an article, The Ugly Face of Veteran Poverty in the United States, almost 1.5 million veterans live in poverty in the United States. Personally, I believe that this number is like a big number, and it should be a lot lower or even non-existent. Our veterans deserve to live a life where they don't have to struggle to buy the necessities in life. According to the same article, The Ugly Face of Veteran Poverty in the United States, the veteran poverty rate for vets between 18 and 34 years old is higher than all the other age groups. This group, of course, means that the veterans of the Gulf War and Afghanistan have higher poverty rates than other veterans. To me, it's very surprising at the ages of these veterans that are particularly facing poverty. I believe that it would be the older generation of veterans, because I believe that we had a better support system for the veterans that are coming home today than we did in the past, which was very surprising to find out that they're the ones that actually suffer most, is the younger generation of veterans. I think we should really create a better support system, and I'm going to talk about that later in the speech just to let you know what we could do to help. The next thing that I will be discussing is the veterans that are homeless. Homelessness is actually very common among the veterans, and this is because it can be expensive to buy a home or an apartment, especially after coming back from being overseas and not really having that much to work with, and it's just harder to find things, especially when you're struggling to adjust back to the life and then also be trying to figure out how you're gonna buy your own place and how you're gonna pay for it, really. According to the article Homelessness Among Veterans, causes of homelessness among veterans are similar to cases of homelessness among non-veterans. Interrelated economic and personal factors, and a shortage of affordable housing. Nearly 500,000 veterans pay more than half their income for rent. More than half of them have incomes below the federal poverty level. So we all know that it's very hard to find affordable housing in today's society. Rent can be typically very high, and it also all depends on where you live, like what state and city you really live in. And the veterans have a really hard time coming home and trying to find a place where they want to settle down, somewhere where they feel safe, that they like, that they can also afford. The biggest reason that it's hard to buy a place to live is because veterans have a hard time finding a job in today's society. Most jobs, you kind of have to have like a college education to make a decent amount of money. And most of the veterans that come home from overseas typically never went to college. They usually graduate from high school and they go right into the military. So they never have to go to college, and then when they come back, they're older and they're trying to readjust, and the college just sometimes isn't always an option for some of them, which makes it very hard for them to find a decent job that offers a decent pay that could help support them with buying a house and all the other necessities that they need. And because they're spending more than half of their income on rent, it makes it really tight on the other things that they need, which is very difficult for people to deal with. Sometimes they can't wrap their heads on how to budget, how to do that certain things that could help them lessen the cost of other things, and it can lead them to struggling and living a life of poverty. And according to the website National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, although flawless counts are impossible to come by, the transient nature of homeless populations presents a major difficulty. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, estimates that 40,056 veterans are homeless on any given night. Now, to me, that's a very big number of veterans who are living on the streets and don't even have a home. And that's so surprising to me that when these veterans come home, that they don't really have a place to go. And sometimes some of them don't have family or people that support them. So coming home is very difficult for them because they don't have anywhere to turn. And some places just don't, most of them don't want to turn to shelters or other places like that because it's like they don't want to admit that they're struggling, and they don't always like to ask for help, especially like older generations. They're more set in their ways and they believe that they'll be able to do it all themselves, and really there's no issue with asking for help. And I believe that we should just already be there to help them and offer places for them to come where it's a small cost or even no cost at all for them to stay there until they can get back on their feet and figure out certain things for themselves. And I personally think it's a heartbreaking statistic to know that many veterans live in poverty and not really many people know about it. So the last thing I'd like to talk about today is some ways that we can help to fix poverty levels among veterans. There's some beneficial programs that have helped other veterans, and if these programs received more support, they could probably help thousands more veterans. Many programs try to help as many veterans as they can, but they have a limited amount of resources, which makes them not able to help as many as they would like. And I believe that the programs that help the best are the safe haven programs. According to the website National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, veterans need a coordinated effort that provides secure housing, nutritional meals, basic physical health care, substance abuse care and aftercare, mental health counseling, personal development and empowerment. Additionally, veterans need a job assessment training and placement assistance. These are things that veterans struggle with when they come home, and if we have a program in place that will help them better understand what they're going through and help them work through things that they might not be able to work through themselves, will really help with getting veterans back on their feet and readjusting to civilian life. And by helping veterans with these kinds of things, we could help them adjust better to life, and they could possibly have a future where they don't struggle with money and they live a better life than they thought they could have. And according to the same website, the most effective programs for homeless and at-risk veterans are community-based nonprofit Veterans Helping Veterans groups. Programs that seem to work best feature transitional housing, with the camaraderie of living in structured, substance-free environments with fellow veterans who are succeeding at bettering themselves. And the reason that these programs work so much is because the veterans who are just coming home and trying to readjust to life can speak to veterans who have gone through the same thing as them, and they can connect better and be more open to telling each other things that they're going through and asking for help, because they have common struggles that they've gone through and they can connect better to each other. Those who have struggled can get help from the ones that struggled before and see that it is possible to live a good life and not live in poverty. And they can just have somebody that they can always talk to, which is probably the most beneficial thing for them. These programs should be funded more by the government so that they could help many more veterans who have sacrificed so much for this country. And in conclusion, I believe that our veterans have done so much to protect this country that we as a country should do all that we can to try and help them adjust back to life and not come back to a life in poverty. I hope that this information helped open your eyes to all the struggles that are faced by the veterans in our community, and I hope some of you will figure out ways on how maybe you could simply help them to readjust to life and become happier and not struggle as much as they do. Thank you.